idea what your first question?
on this.
Hey, Chromatics, how are you, man? Matthew, how are you?
Thank you, Matthew.
I guess they're not on mic, right?
Okay, so welcome everyone. This is actually going to be our last workshop in the series. So we'll do all our wrapping up at the end. But today we're going to be speaking with Errol about urban music, quote unquote urban music. I know some of us don't like to use that term, but at least we all understand it. And Canadian radio, just a little bit about how emerging artists can gain exposure for their music, and just a little bit about what that side of the industry is like. If you've been here for the 5 weeks, you know me already. I'm Karis. But I'll introduce myself for those who don't. So I'm a singer, songwriter, music producer. Um, Started out on creative side of things, solely just doing music for myself, and then I went to study music business, which is actually where Errol and I met at Harris.
Yeah.
And from that, it's kind of just been immersing myself in music business stuff, working at different jobs in the industry. And now I'm currently at Afrowave, um, and hosting these workshops for you all to get more information on what the business side of the industry is like. Just a couple of things before I hand over to Errol so he can introduce himself. So as I said, disclaimer, I'm in Jamaica. You may hear environmental noise. I'll try to mute as much as I can. But also, we are recording the session. So if you know someone who wanted to be here but wasn't able to, they'll be able to access that on our website. I'll just throw that in here if you want to take that down. So it's www.afrowaveto.com. And of course, if you have any questions, you can shoot us a message at Afrowaveto or operations@afrowaveto.com. If you have questions, so we actually have a designated Q&A section after we speak with Errol. You can put your questions in the Q&A. We will get to them. I promise you that once you send it through, I see it. If it's something we can address right away, then we will get to that. If it's something I think we could leave till a little bit later, just so that we keep it flowing, we will address them at the end in the Q&A section. Alrighty, so we have Errol Nazareth with us today. I'm gonna hand over to him, just let him introduce himself, tell you a little bit about who he is and what he's been doing in the industry. Welcome,
Hey,
Errol.
guys, welcome. Hey, Matthew, Phoenix Geo. Yeah, I wish more people came out because
Yeah.
this really is an issue that has been, it's been a constant well before I got into media and will always be there, I think, unfortunately. Um, so I began my music journalism career really like maybe early 90s, Scarborough Mirror. And it was funny because you'd be going to the Scarborough Mirror reading all about like politicians and ribbon cutting ceremonies. And then you get to this section with James Brown on the cover or like a local hip hop act, you know?
Yeah.
So it was great to have all that freedom to like talk about different artists and stuff. And then from there, I ended up in at Now magazine, where I was writing strictly, you know, black politics, racism, censorship, those kinds of issues. Then from there, I jumped to the Sun, which is where a lot of people know me from, because every Friday I would write a column on it was either hip hop or, you know, for lack of a better term, global music or what was being called world music at that point. And I still have people who actually, people like Ron Nelson and stuff, they still on Instagram, he'll post an article that I wrote in the Sun from like 1993. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel old. But he's got a massive archive of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Um, there was an act that Ron got me interested in called Rumble and Strong. So the guy was a DJ and one guy was a MC, and I remember featuring them in the Scarborough Mirror. So it was like a lot of, you know, good times, which is what the section was called, Good Times, which sounds so like suburban, you know. But it was at the Scarborough Mirror where, you know, I've always had a love for, music, but especially now black music from every corner of the world. And when I was there, it was just like they gave me all the freedom in the world to interview whoever I wanted. So, you know, everyone from, you know, Socrates before he was well known to like all the artists on Def Jam and you know, the Grassroots and Kish and Thrust and all these people. So, you know, writing about the music in a very kind of, you know, respectful way. Um, I think people saw that, and so that's how that column, you know, its currency kind of grew.
Mhm.
And then from there, a couple of people from CBC approached me and said, "Have you ever considered doing radio?" And I was like, "No." And you know, with a lot of guidance and mentorship, they brought me on board. And you know, for the context of this discussion, they were, you know, white people. Wasn't like someone came, you know, from another community saying, "Hey, you should come on here." They saw what I was doing and the worth that it had. And there too, I had a lot of freedom, you know, to do stuff. And then, you know, starting to host Big City Small World, which airs on Saturday evenings, which focuses strictly on the local music scene.
Mhm.
And the mandate for that show is a very strict mandate. It has to be GTA artists and artists from diverse communities. So pretty much non-white artists, right? So in every show, you might hear like a couple of like indie acts and stuff. Because I mean, I love that shit. I lived in England for a while, and I love guitars and punk and all that other shit. But my heart is in amplifying voices from these different communities. So pretty much what's happened is from Scarborough Mirror days right till now, um, it's still doing that, you know, and people that I knew back then, I'm still kind of, you know, so Mishi, who I knew before, you know, around the time she blew up, and
Yeah.
Danny O, I'm still writing about those guys and still talking about them on the radio. So every step I made, it went higher and higher, you know, just brought those folks along with me, you
Yeah.
know. In terms of, you know, so yeah, that's an intro. So if you want to start with the questions, and we can go from there.
Sure. So the first thing, just so we can kind of set context for everyone, was you started out in, you said, writing, like journalism.
Journalism,
And
yeah.
then how long have you been in radio specifically?
Radio about 15 years, I would say, yeah.
Okay. Did you see in terms of the transition, was there a difference for you in terms of the issues that you had to address? Was it the same? What did it look like in terms of the landscape for minority groups and artists?
Yeah, it
Um,
was the same.
all right.
You know, in music journalism at that time, there were, I don't know, there weren't that many people writing about hip hop from, you know, this perspective of world or global music from out this perspective, right?
Yeah.
It was pretty much like a white thing all along.
Would you
Still
say that
is.
it's the same today, or has it changed? Have you seen changes in?
It's changed a bit. I mean, the fact that, you know, CBC Music, which is like, you know, has a black music show, two
Mhm.
hours every night, 5 days of the week. That's a huge win for the culture, you know.
Yeah.
And that came along only because, and I have to really mention his name because, you know, Steve Jordan used to be with the Polaris Prize,
Hmm.
and when he joined CBC as an executive, um, he called me and we talked about, because I also do a show there now, like it's a national show and it airs on Tuesday evenings, and it's pretty much focused on global music that's being made here and
Yeah.
all over the world. And we had some long conversations about the kind of show I wanted and the vision for it. And he mentioned that he was going to do something with the block. And so, but you know, 2021, right? That's a long time to wait to
Yeah.
come along. Which I mean, you know, we celebrate these things, but at the same time, we're like, why did it take so long?
Yeah.
Well, we're not really in those positions of power. You sound like you look at the thing and sort of go, play this, or you know, get this person to do this, right? Like kind of thing I was doing um, when I was at the Scarborough Mirror, at
Mhm.
the Sun, at Weekly, at CBC. You know, I still, like, before pandemic time, still go out. I went to an Afrowave show that we had talked about,
Yeah.
and was kind of blown away by what I was seeing.
Yeah.
And it's from there that you discover people and go like, hey, you know, like,
Yeah.
send me some music and let's do this and whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or or people, it's really interesting, you know. You either go out to you know, quote unquote, to listen to stuff, and then you end up discovering something,
Hmm.
um, or people study and watch what you're doing pretty carefully, and will reach out to you and go, okay, this guy's doing this with a real sense of respect for my culture, even though he's not from that culture. I think Phoenix maybe ever reached out to me that way. Maybe I knew her through sorority and whatnot, and I've played her many times on the show. So it's either that happens, but I don't see other broadcasters and journalists really kind of doing that work. They're kind of waiting for someone else to break the artist, you know?
Which was one of the questions I guess we could talk about it a little bit more once we kind of get through that, was just about your approach to finding music and how you discovered the artists that you play. If it's a mixture, if you if they submit to you, if you find them, how do you come across?
Yeah, this is a good question. I get asked that a lot because people are like, where do you find this stuff, right? Like, yesterday on my national show, Frequencies, that is on CBC Music, we played an all women Mexican rock group, like these women rockers, and it's like punk. It was fucking amazing. It was a great track. And we ended off with a track by a 77-year-old Pakistani singer who's the last living exponent of a devotional style of music that goes back 1,000 years. When he dies, that tradition is over, right? So people say, like, where do you find this stuff? So there's a lot of work involved. I mean, so for example, let's focus on big city, which focuses on the local scene, right? So for me, it comes from different places. So several publicists I've been working with for many years know what the show is about, know the show's vision and mandate. So they'll reach out and go, for example, Lexicon works with Ola at Indo Recess.
Yeah.
So Indo Recess, I know Ola well, you know, a lot of respect for her. So she'll say, hey, Lexicon's got this new track, check it out, whatever. Listen to it. Okay, it's nice, I'll play it. If not, I won't. Then I'll go to another level. So if I play the track and I'll touch base with Lexicon and go like, hey, when's the next Afrowave? And he'll be like, okay, you should come out to Baby G, which is, I think, one of the last live shows I saw. And so I went there. It was a nice night. Right at Dundas West, right?
Was that back in 2019?
Yeah.
I think I performed at that show.
Maybe you did.
I think so.
So that happened. And then from there, I'll be like, wow. So if I forgive me for saying this, but I don't remember. But I mean, if someone's an artist and go, wow, do you have any music? So I go that extra step. And just that's me being a music geek. I'm not here to pat myself on the back. I've never been in that for that. And anyone who knows me knows that. So so those are ways where you just get deeper into certain communities and you make those connections, right? Another way is just me being a music head and sort of going, like, I'm on Instagram, on Twitter a lot, or sometimes I'll just blast through Instagram and say, Trippy have put a new video out. I'll be like, holy fuck, man, that's pretty powerful. Direct message them, even though I don't know them, and say, hey, Phoenix, it's Errol from Big City. I love this track. Can you send it to me? I'm going to consider it for radio play, right? Or people will reach out to me if they feel comfortable enough to reach out and be like, and this is the important part. There's two ways of doing this, and I have to be very kind of clear on it. One is a very professional way, and one is a very kind of like, someone once just started with, that was the opening line. That doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. On the other hand, if you say, thank you, that means a lot. I appreciate it. On the other hand, if you say, hey, Errol, I'm a big fan of Big City, and you've been playing a lot of Nigerian stuff, and, I just came here and I'm kind of mixing Afro beats with house or with jazz, you might like this track. What do you think? Let me know, whatever. So it's a two-way thing. I'll find stuff, or people send stuff to me. And then, my producer, Alexa, God bless her. She, she's French indigenous, and I don't know where she finds stuff from. Like, she plays like so much great African music. I'm not sure where she's finding it.
Yeah.
She loves.
Lexicon's like that too. Like, he'll come and he'll bring me like a list of 12 artists to go through to choose for a showcase. I'm like, I am living in the same city as you. I don't know these people. But some people do just have that ear for it, or, their ears to the ground. They know people who are coming.
And then there's another level, like, so the interaction of like, okay, I got the track, I like it. Or sometimes if I'm like right now, I'm just like completely like overwhelmed because I also teach three big groups at Humber College, the radio program. So there's like 20 in each, so that's like 60 papers, right, of grading,
Yeah.
right? And then you're working on two shows at the same time. So there are times I'll just get an email and just like, Alexa, you can take care of this.
Yeah.
So she gets back to someone, she gets back to them. If not, I would urge people not to feel like we're disrespecting them, or sometimes there's not enough time, hours in the day to listen to all the music we get.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there are bands that I've liked and play a lot, right, on the show. And those very bands, musicians will drop something and I'll be like, I don't like this. So like, I just won't play it. But people know that. They know that everything that they make is not going to hit, or they know that, but it's a long process. So it's like sending your resume out, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, you have to keep trying until it kind of really sticks. Do you know what I mean?
Do
Yeah.
you think that it's because I know like Phoenix just made a comment too, and it's actually a thought that I had, that a lot of people, from my knowledge, I guess correct me if I'm wrong, don't search for music the way that you have described in depth that you do. Do you think that could have something to do with discovering artists who are in minority groups and just their access to being able to get exposure on the radio?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think your reputation and your record plays a big role in that, you know. Um, Around the time when the George Floyd murder went down, the Black Lives Matter was just really in everyone's faces, rightfully
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
We did a special show where we just wanted to amplify like local Black voices, and I was talking with Keisha Fresh, and she was like, I know you, I know your record, and if anybody steps to you and says, well, this is some kind of performative allyship, because a lot of white organizations were doing that, right?
Yeah.
Flying the Black Lives Matter flag and hashtags and shit, but a few months later, like, they don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
She goes, anyone steps to you, let me know. And it was very sweet that she said that, because she goes, your heart's always been in the right place, What happens from that is, like, if people sense that you're writing about music and a culture which you're not from, and you're doing it in a very respectful way, word gets around, right? So someone like Phoenix would be like, hey, Errol, you've really got to check out this artist. She's got the most amazing voice. Let me flip you an email, or here's a link, right?
Yeah.
And then it just grows. My database just grows. I'm like, wow, okay, thanks for that. And I mean, there are times we'll play an artist on the show. One time I played one of my students on the show. This guy was like, great R&B singer.
Yeah.
He was a real idiot to me at the end of the semester, because he just didn't do his work and just fucked around.
I know.
But regardless, like, and I was walking out of the classroom, and I was like, and there were these kids around. You're talking about Discovery, right? There were these kids listening to like the stuff, and I'm like, who's singing? This kid's name was Jafari, and he's like, that's a great fucking track. Send me the file. He did. I liked it. We played it.
Yeah.
That's like what happened when I spoke at Treb. It's like 2 or 3 of you guys sent me files, and I liked it, and I ended up playing on the radio, right?
Yeah.
Because I know how hard it is to be seen, right, and to get that kind of like play, right? Like, even with a show like The Block, just because it's a 2-hour Black music show, does that mean you're just gonna walk in there? Not necessarily,
I think that is definitely incredible that you still try to discover music so organically, because it's definitely something that, for example, I know like Lex and I talk about all the time, because we do tons and tons of research, just looking at, for example, I know one of the interesting statistics that he had showed to me was just the amount of quote unquote Black music that gets funded versus music in other genres that are like rock and punk and stuff like that. Like, the percentages were, I don't remember them off my head now, but it was like an incredible gap to see. And we kind of talked about it and talked about why that could be. And we didn't think that it was just, that it was a bias just in it and of itself, but rather just not having that kind of interaction with that type of music, and those artists in those genres, not, which is how the series came about, those artists in those genres not even having the access to
Yeah.
information to understand how to submit for these grants. And so at the end of the day, that pool, there isn't much to choose from. And so I think too that there are a lot of artists that are trying to get the information, trying to figure out how to access stuff, but the industry is kind of like shut a lot of emerging artists out. Because even being in Toronto, trying to get to people, trying to figure out who does this, who does that, how do I get my music to them, or how do I get to sit down with them? It's like you go through, it's like a glass ceiling. Like you go through so many different persons, and then sometimes you still don't even end up getting an opportunity just to say, hey, this is what I do. So I think it's very incredible that you still kind of keep that up, because it takes work. Like I know a lot of people that could probably just sit down and wait for music to be submitted to them. Even working with Afrowave, we have people that submit to us as well. And, we could sit and just be like, oh, we'll just let people submit. But it's so important that we go out and find people too, because there are people who don't even know that Afrowave exists. So I think that, just on your part, that helps so much with access for Black artists and people in minority groups. Like just being able to have someone say, hey, the door's open, like you can send me your stuff. It's not a guarantee that I play it, but I'll listen to it, because a lot of artists don't even get the chance to have someone listen to them.
And it's tough too. I mean, the reality also is that, like, besides this 1 hour show that's dedicated to, Black music, world, global music, whatever you want to call it, like who else is playing this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And that's something that was reflected even in me. Like I had to find the panelists that we would have for this workshop, and for the series. And it was like, I messaged Lex. I was like, hey, Lex, like, do you know any recommendations? Because it's the same names, the same people from, like, who do grant writing. It's the same people in radio. It's the same, like, it's the same name every time. And so we had that where we're like, because last year what we did, just because it was our introduction, it was our debut of this series, we were like, we'll just find anyone who's accessible, who has information and is willing to share. And this year it was so important for us to just keep it to people who are working so hard to elevate Black artists and people of color. So we had Tao from Blue Crane, we had Kezia from Advance. Like we really tried to focus on that, and it proved to be such a challenge. Like just to find, there were like 2 names in a certain part of the industry you could choose from. And I think that too is, it bleeds into everything. It's like the landscape, the panelists don't reflect the landscape of music, especially in Toronto, where there's so many immigrants. Like it's a whole melting pot. And so it wasn't making sense for us, and just trying to bridge that void to say, how can artists that look like us or do the kind of music that we do even feel confident in pitching their stuff when the workshops we're going to don't reflect anyone who would understand it. And so a lot of times there's just this issue of access, that comes up, and being able to kind of see the people who are responsible for opening doors reflect what the music is.
And then the community got another hit when D90's. What's happening with that station? Is it gone off the air or what? What's happening with D98.7?
That has been a topic I have no idea. You're not the first person I've heard say it, but it's weird for me. I know I've pitched stuff to them a couple times in many ways through the phone, through email, through encountering someone who I know works there, and yet I know for me I've had a difficult time. But I know other people who get played consistently, and so I am not sure as to what's going on around that.
Because the last time I heard about this was like about a month ago, and someone said what was her name? Gemini, who I've known since like 15, 20 years. She put this post saying, all good things must come to an end, and I'm going to miss being on the morning show. And then people were like, "Oh, I just tuned in, and all I'm hearing is music, commercials, and no."
Yeah.
That's beside. Well, it's not really beside the point, but the thing is, like, that's another. There's another place that black music makers took a hit, so it's not there, right? So then what happens is, like, you know, sometimes people have this unfair expectation that there's this one show on CBC that's doing this, therefore they should just automatically play this stuff. But and I understand the frustration, because there's so few outlets. So if there's only one, then everybody wants to sort of get on that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, what has because I know, even you talking about the Black Lives Matter just uprising during that time, and the amount of things that it was so interesting for me. I deliberately tried to stay off social media as much as I could. I know a lot of other persons said that during that time, because it was just interesting to see how much that hashtag went around, how many things came into place like that, because nobody wanted to be part of an organization that wasn't doing something about it. But then it just got so quiet, really quiet. And I know too, like the block came up, frequencies that you host. What has the response been like for those shows? Do you think that there's been an impact from putting those shows on?
It's too early to tell, because radio is just really driven by like ratings and numbers and stuff. But as someone who's very active on social, like, and this is like a whole different workshop. It's how you have to invest so much time in social to really push your show, right?
Yeah.
So every Tuesday I'm spending like literally an hour, 2 hours, like live tweeting, and an hour before scheduling all the tweets. And the feedback has been really immense. And actually, we might do a show talking just about the feedback, because the feedback to the music we're playing it kind of transcends going, wow, that's like a hot beat, or that's like that was a great line, or that's a great tune. This is going deeper. This is like the other day, I actually posted it on Twitter. I happened to jump into Instagram, and a young Iranian woman direct messaged me, and she said, I was playing this artist by the name of Haidia, and she said I was in tears when I was listening to it, because it took me back home. And she said, I've never felt more belonged in Canada than when I heard the show. And I was like, wow, just like if I died yesterday, like I'd be happy knowing that you made that kind of. But we get a lot of that really kind of like straight from the heart and soul kind of feedback, as opposed to, which is nice if someone says, wow, her voice gave me chills, which is like amazing, right?
Yeah.
But when it goes a bit deeper, like I think when the show debuted in February, a young Black woman on Twitter was like, she goes, it's nice to be finally seen.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, man. And I'm like, I've been doing this forever. I know where you're coming from, Or someone said, we finally have a home or something, right?
Yeah.
This guy from a Latin hip hop group. So I think on that very kind of like, immediate level, like when I'm tweeting and people are tweeting back on that day and the next day, you see this very kind of like a really soulful, really thoughtful, very personal kind of feedback. I'm not sure I'm not sure like what kind of feedback the block is getting. I know they were up for an award, or they were shot. I think they won an award recently. So at least that's happening there, which is great. But it's tough. I mean, even with those shows, like how do you get to Angeline? I don't know.
Yeah.
How you really have to do your homework. You really have to like listen to the show and go, I think my music is going to be a good fit for your show. Here's the link, the Spotify link. Here's the SoundCloud link. Here's my website, and here's the latest video that we just did. So you make it easy for me to sort of go, wow, I can make a decision right now, as opposed to going here, then everywhere to look for this stuff. So, like I'm saying, I operate from a different level because from day one, whether I was at the Scarborough Mirror or the Sun, I was in those clubs, like DJ X, some of you may not even know. He took over the hip hop show that Ron Nelson was doing. And he had this really cool event called Live at the Barbecue. And it would happen in a small spot in Kensington Market.
Yeah.
And it was such a chill vibe. There would be like music and food and like local hip hop artists doing their thing. And it was just like, I miss those days.
Yeah.
And you went there and people would give you the cassette and go, hey, check out my thing.
Yeah.
And people, it was amazing because there was like a real sense of community happening.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's happening now, but I was right in the thick of it. And, people didn't care, regardless of the Sun's reputation, they didn't care. They just knew they took you for what you stood for, your values, what you were bringing to the table. And were like, and I'd be like, come on down. And I would just arrange photo shoots and just like pretty much it was like anyone I knew who was making good music got a shot at it. And, one time, Sprox, he's producer, he's worked with a bunch of people, local guy. He sent me something on Facebook, which really kind of almost brought me to tears. He's like, when you were writing there, I remember going to the corner store and actually ripping out the page with the column in it.
Yeah.
Or that people, so I think people feel more comfortable sort of like reaching out, going, okay, look at what he's tweeting about, it's about, he's tweeting about like white privilege and, or, racism, anti-Black racism, or tweeting about music from India and stuff. And so, maybe or then they listen to the show and it's like, oh, well, let's put two and two together. And so you send me a direct message on Instagram and say, hey, check my stuff out. Yeah. So I've discovered quite a few artists that way.
Yeah.
Like I said, the volume is so much though, like it can be pretty overwhelming. And
yeah. But it's interesting that you say that too, because I was speaking with Zakisha Brown. Yeah, she was our first for our first workshop. She was the person that we had, and she was we were both kind of talking about how, because she moved to Ghana and I moved to Jamaica. We were kind of just talking about why and the effect that it had on our music. And you talked about how like people will study your tweets and what you tweet, and it's like you have to explicitly be out there and say, I'm promoting Black music.
Yeah.
It's which I think is something that shouldn't have to be, because a lot of, for example, a lot of radio stations or radio personalities don't have to do that. And it's like for you to get your music played, you have to find someone who's like, I'm pro-Black, which it says a lot about where the industry is. And I was saying to her that, like when I was in Toronto, because I do like reggae soul, so it's like a mixture of reggae and soul. And as in Toronto, and there was like a niche community, like there's the same people, there's a small group of people that I could reach out to for things to do with reggae and getting some exposure with reggae. But it was the same personalities, the same organizations, the same people over and over, because they were the only ones who I knew I stood a chance with getting something played. She was kind of echoing that, like in Ghana, like she wrote that song about Ghana, and people appreciate that music, and they don't look at it as like, oh, it's coming from a Black artist. It's just a song that's uplifting them and their country, and they approach it so differently. And that's kind of the approach that's here in Jamaica. It's like, it doesn't really matter, how you identify in terms of what your complexion looks like. And once it comes to music, it's just, is it good? Is it not good? And that's it. Like being, I think in more of a formal structure, like Canada, it's all the people that you pitch to have like explicitly been on social media, promoting themselves or through their expression, saying that they promote Black music or that they're pro-Black. Like it's like you have to explicitly state it, because it's almost like you don't have a chance.
I did that on the street. Yeah.
So I think that's also just an incredible observation, and it says a lot about where the industry is. And I think that a lot of, even speaking to other persons who are artists and trying to make it, there's a bit of of fear, because like I said, like doing Afrowave showed me so much, because Lex started out with the live shows. I'm like, where are you
Right.
finding these artists? Like, we started out with just live shows. The pandemic kind of forced us to switch into to other stuff like the workshop series and what we could do online. But starting out with the live shows, he's like, oh, I have 12 artists this showcase. I'm like, where are you finding like Black artists or Latino artists? Because like I can't understand where you find them.
Right, right.
And we just had an interesting conversation about the fact that you hear it everywhere. You know, you hear it in
Right. I'm on a
Drake's
call, right?
music. You know, mainstream
I'm on a call.
music
Yeah.
adopts so much of the cultural sounds and just the instrumentation, the melodies. I know as a Jamaican, there are a lot of Jamaican samples that are used in mainstream songs and they get played. But me bringing something, you know, that sounds the same probably won't get played, and it kind of instills a lot of fear, I think, and just, you know, nervousness for artists, because
Yeah.
it's almost like it's not worth it, like you, like I said, the constant uphill battle,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
I
know.
wanted to speak to that. I think, um, regardless of whether you hear back from me or Angeline or
Mhm.
G987, I think, you can't, those of you who are listening, you obviously have a thick skin, you're survivors, straight
Mhm.
up survivors in this business, because it's hard, it's
Yeah.
cutthroat. There's people that you would consider friends that may not be friends anymore.
Yeah.
There's always someone who wants to cast an evil eye on you or say some dumb shit, you know what I'm saying? Um, I don't think any of that stuff should really deter you from your goal, which is to just make music
Mhm.
from the heart and soul and put it out there. And you never know one day if it's going to be, whether it's big city or frequencies or the block, that something bigger or better might come along and be like, wow, I really like this. It's happened many times with, there are artists who've posted on social media crying because they heard I played a song and they never
Yeah.
ever thought their music would be played on the radio, right? It's tough. It really is. I mean, and there's a lot of responsibility too, right? Because like it's like, okay, now I'm doing these two shows. One's kind of both kind of like pushing music from non-white communities. And so then there's this expectation to like just kind of um, play everything that I get, and like I said, I get that because we are hungry for that, right? We've never had that. So then when it comes along, you're like, okay, well, I'm a Black artist and making great music in Toronto. Why is G987 not returning my phone calls?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't get bitter about it. You just have to keep on bashing away. And like Lexicon and Phoenix and Trippy and them, they just put those videos out on Instagram, and you put the video out on thing, and you a lot of self promotion, and you never know where that's gonna land and where it's gonna hit. And
Mhm.
when someone, like, when I move on, like, who's gonna host that show? Like,
Yeah.
who's, like, will they say, well, now okay, we did our part and we're gonna just shelf it
Mhm.
and put something else on the air?
Mhm.
It's hard, but I think props to Afrowave and stuff. Thanks, Phoenix, man, I appreciate it. Thanks to Afrowave, like, for doing this kind of stuff. Okay, so there's 4 people, right? I mean, like, at least you've put yourself out there and said, well, we want to serve our community, right? At the end of the day, you know, I don't know how many listeners I have, like, or what the ratings are. At the end of the day, like, if I were to be, if God struck me down tomorrow and I could not speak anymore, I'll be like, you know what? That was a hell of a fucking run for 20 something years to like push the music from all these different communities in a very kind of respectful way and kind of make their day.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Cut a long story short is you got to keep doing what you're doing, and the venues or like the avenues and the platforms seem to be like shrinking, and then you all have to get creative and sort of go, okay, if I have YouTube, which I never had. I mean, when I was in journalism school, there was no online. There was no internet, right? So that's how ancient we are. But now you've got all these things, and then use them for what you're worth. Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
that's the best thing I can do. See, I'm gonna end with this, like, this comparison, right? Like, back in the day, man, when I was writing at the Scarborough Mirror and at the Sun and stuff. Remember those days when everybody wanted a record deal?
Yep.
I think you said, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that.
How many people give a shit about like chasing a record deal anymore? No.
With
You
people.
all are doing like a fantastic job putting your own shit out, man.
Mhm.
Like I'll be like, can you send me the video? Can you send me an MP3? They'll be like, okay, yo, I got you. Here's the Dropbox. Here are the
Yeah.
MP3s. Here are the WAV files. Here's the latest video, and this is my press release.
Hmm.
All done by themselves. No,
Everything.
no one's done it for them, right? Self-sufficiency is the way, right?
Yeah.
So use those avenues and use those platforms for all they're worth.
Hmm.
Because now it's like, okay, Errol can't pay my song. Well, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
We
Just keep.
definitely talked about because it's definitely shifted from traditional streams, from traditional means of exposure. And I think it's interesting. Someone was reminding me of this. I forgot who said it, but it's that creativity is birthed from restriction, and I think that comes out so much. Like I remember, uh, Havaya. I met Havaya at Honey Jam, and just seeing just how much she grew, and now her sister is in music as well, putting and there are a lot of other persons that have just gone and just done it without traditional means of getting
Yeah,
there, just figuring out their own unique unconventional ways of
yeah,
getting their music heard, because you are right that there are so many other ways to, and the respect from traditional outlets may be waning, and I think it still does play an important part in people hearing your music and getting it out. But like you said, it's not the end of the world. A lot of stress goes on to those few stations that actually play black music, or music from people of color, and I, we have to keep working until it gets there. But there are there are ways to get noticed, as you said. So I think
yeah,
there's definitely hope for
yeah.
for artists to get exposure for their stuff. Before we go into questions, was there anything you wanted to add before we head into?
Yeah, my thing is like, since we're talking about radio play, I think my thing is like, like we talked about earlier, is like, don't wait for the traditional places to sort
Yeah.
of say, hey, we're going to play your track, and, or no, we're not going to play your track.
Hmm.
Find those ways and means to get it out there.
Yeah.
Um, People of color, black people, indigenous people have been doing this for years. They haven't waited for white folks to come around to sort of say, hey, here's a helping hand. You just do your own shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
The jazz scene in London, England, and in Britain is amazing. Like the black British jazz scene, like
That's so true.
I've played several
Yeah.
of them on my show, and they're just phenomenal. And they haven't waited for anyone to come around.
Yeah.
And you're talking about jazz. How many people are playing jazz on the radio these days?
I
I
know.
try my best to put on both the shows, but I think the thing is to really do your homework and sort of go, okay, if I want to get on the block, will my track fit there? You know,
Hmm.
and if it does, then how do I go about reaching this person at the block,
Yeah.
right? And then when you do reach out to that person, that make that first impression, go, hey, love the show. Um, been listening to it since you started, and I think my song might be a good fit. Here's a bit about myself. Here's the wave file. Here's the video. If you can, great. If you can play it, great. If not,
Hmm.
whatever. You know what I'm saying? You don't even have to say that. So that's the very kind of like that initial point of contact. I wrote just the 3 points was research and reach out, right? So reach out is like not just the block, but who would play this, right?
Hmm.
So you have to do your homework there. Reach out in a very kind of professional way, and if social media sometimes too, and then follow up and go, hey, did you get this, and is there anything you can do with it? And at that time you have to be ready for people to say, well, for me, like I said earlier, if I'm so overwhelmed with stuff, I'll just pass it on to my two
Yeah.
producers and go, they've got it, it's up to them, because I can't really listen to everything I'm going to play. um that's really like my kind of you know my that's the way I'm kind of like operating. Yeah, that's the best advice I can give.
I hope everyone's taking notes. Please take notes
They
for
know
the
everything.
series.
They know everything.
Yeah, just to add to that, one thing that actually, Zakisha said the same thing too, helped in terms of getting access. I know we're talking about Canadian radio, but one thing that actually helped me to get access to people in the Canadian industry was looking outside of the Canadian industry. Like, I found people in Jamaica who, like, I'm Jamaican, I'm doing reggae soul. There's gonna be, a plethora of outlets that I could reach out to. And once, I got airplay or I got to do an interview here, then I would use that as part of my press kit to reach out to Canadian outlets, and that really helped. So that's kind of one thing that's been echoed in the series. Is just go where you are valued, see what you can do there, how you can make a name there, and use that to introduce other people to you. So that's one thing that that really helped. I know for me, and I know Zakisha said the same thing, and we've had it kind of echoed through the series. Is like, you're in the Canadian industry, but music is so global now that
It's interesting you make that point about Jamaica, because I interviewed an artist. He was nominated for a Juno in the gospel category. I forget his name now. He's originally from Jamaica, and we had a good conversation. It was for the SOCAN magazine, which is like a national magazine, Words and Music. And he said to me, like, I just really tried to succeed in Jamaica, but they were like, your version of gospel is not gonna, they told
that's a whole other story.
Yeah, they told him, you need to leave the country, and he did, and he moved to Saskatchewan, which is like the coldest province in the world, I guess. And the guy got nominated for a Juno Award.
You have to go. You have to go where.
Yeah, I can't tell people, like, when you have roots in the city, to just kind of pick up and leave. But I mean, if that's what it's going to take, if you want
not physically, guys, we don't have to make the big jump and go to a whole other country. But I mean, just like scouting online, making connections online, like everybody's basically online these days. I know, like, the first time I got played in Jamaica, and while we're closing up here, I know it's just a much smaller group today, but if you have any questions, feel free to send them to the Q&A so that we can address them. I know Geo always has questions. Geo, do you have a question for us today?
For places like CBC, getting a write-up or some kind of press does great for an artist when they're trying to reach out to other platforms, but I don't know where to start when it comes to who to reach out to find the people to contact. Most shows have, like, I know most shows have an email address. Mm-hmm. So let me just check and see if the blog has something like that, okay?
I think the blog did post, one of their earlier posts was, if you want to send music to us, you submit it here. But I forget what the email is now.
Hold on.
It posted.
Yeah, there's a picture of Angeline, but they don't show.
No, I think you have to.
I mean, I'm in the system there, so I could find out, but I'm not sure if anybody is seeing. It just tells you, oh yeah, it is. Oh, it tells you to follow the blog on social, but they have the Instagram, and well, I would hit them if they say that they have. I don't know if anyone here has tried reaching to them on Instagram or Twitter.
There was a picture. I think it was only posted once or twice though, about submitting with an email, but I cannot recall what it is now. It's one of the early. You'll probably have to scour through the.
Yeah, play, share, visit us. And there's a playlist, and there's a picture of Shad's album. Yeah, they don't make it very easy to.
Not at all.
They don't make it easy, whereas I'm there a lot, so folks are just like, hey, here's my latest track. But yeah, that requires some digging. I guess you have to find out, like, usually the CBC Media Center would have that stuff. But if anyone on this list wants to know how to get in touch with them, I mean, it shouldn't be hard. I can find that information and send it to you. You know, but it's a 2-hour show, right? I mean,
Have any?
so yeah, Matthew. Sorry, Matthew. There. Sorry
Yeah.
if I'm not answering the question, but I don't know what other shows would. Oh yeah. There is a thing for CBC Music submissions. Here you go. I'm gonna put this in the thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, this would be it. Here, hold on, guys.
I have one here.
There you go. And what some people are doing, let me jump into my email and I'll show you exactly what how some folks are doing this. Okay, hold on.
Okay.
I'll show you exactly what we get on our end, so you see the whole process. Okay. Give me 1 sec, because I have to do this verification on my phone.
I was trying to find.
So if you were to do that, like say Phoenix were to do that, I would. This is what it would look like. So I would get an email from CBC Music Library, right? The CBC Music Library, because we have this massive, right? And it would say something like this. Hold on a second. I'm looking for a better example. Just bear with me. So see, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Okay, here's the chat. So this person went to that link, clicked on it, and then sent this. So I've taken out his name, but in the subject it says "Too Big City, Small World." And you see it there, music.library@cbc.ca. So what folks are doing there, they would be like, in the subject line, they would be "Big City, Small World," the block, frequencies. So they would say, hey, you know, we're big fans of your program. We'd like to submit a track that would fit into your playlist mandate. Is a Jamaican musician, graphic designer, a Mennonite school teacher, and an Italian sound designer. So that's like pretty interesting stuff. So they would do that. So they would send. So what CBC, the people who monitor that email, they would send it to me, Angeline, and to Jarrett, who hosts a show called Reclaim, which is like 100% indigenous music. So that's what artists would do. So, you know, if Phoenix sent in a song and she'd be like, you know, this is for consideration for, you know, Big City and the block. And then she would write this letter and all the links would be there and I'd be good to go. So she doesn't have to go, hey, you know, I don't want to I don't want to slip into this guy's DMs. And they want to go through a more official way than you go through that, you know?
Yeah. The other thing I know,
although she does that all the time, but
the other thing I know helped is if you listen to a station in the morning, or you know, whenever, and you hear a segment that sounds like your music could fit into that. That's what I used to do. I would find out who hosts that segment, and then I would call the station or email the station and see if I can get directly to them. Because a lot of times you can access these people, but when you send to a main email, it's probably not the priority email of the day, when the person sits down to go through
No,
everything.
but they do a pretty good job. I mean,
Yeah,
that
that
when you
is,
thought they do a good job. Like we get a lot of those, and so sometimes
yeah,
we'll discover stuff through them. Um, and that's for people who may not know who the host is and
yeah,
have reservations about direct messaging them and going, hey, I'm so and so, and this is my new track, and let me know
yeah,
what you think of it.
yeah.
So yeah, that,
Sometimes I know, because even like with CBC, like you have an email designated to stuff for you that we can directly reach you
yeah,
at. So I know that there are most stations do have that. So even if you could get access to that email, then that also helps you out as well.
yeah,
Um,
totally, yeah,
like I said, too, you can do this for Canadian radio. You can do it for international stations. The first time I got played on, it's funny. It's funny. The first time I got played on Canadian radio, I was living in Jamaica, and the first time I got played on Jamaican radio, I was living in Canada. So, so it's very interesting how it works. But you can do the same thing like globally. Just
yeah,
there are a lot find out, especially if you have someone on the ground. Like what the stations are, what they're doing. A lot of stations have websites that you can go and check out, listen to some of the segments online.
yeah,
And but it's a lot of research, and you have to be. Sometimes it can be a lot of research, and you have to be committed to it, but there are people that you can ultimately, access.
yeah.
Those are just some of the ways.
Any more questions before we were able to?
Yes, I was able to hear myself on radio. There was probably once or twice that somebody sent it to me, but I did get to. It was pretty good. I record it every time, and I act the same way every time, just to say how much. It's good to hear your track being played back to a large group of people through something traditional like radio. Seeing it up on YouTube is one thing, and hearing it on Spotify, but being able to be played on radio is a pretty good feeling. So research and keep at it. And what I noticed is once you've made, I know the few stations I've connected with out here. Once you make that connection and you reach out and you thank them, or you post the song being played and you're like, oh, thank you so much to CBC, or Zip 103 or whatever the station is, for playing my song. A lot of times they will actually reach out to you about new stuff that you have, or they'll be more welcome to you sending them
Mhm.
new tracks that you have. So it's all about building connections. Like if they play you and you heard it, but you don't say thanks, you don't do anything at all, then it's kind of hard for them
Yeah,
to have that connection with you, because at the end of the day, you are hearing it through a machine, but the people that are playing are humans, and you know we all can appreciate when that gratitude is shown. So that's also a good thing to kind of,
yeah, that's a good point.
yeah.
No, I mean, in closing, I think,
Mhm.
the artists, I guess it's all about context. So the artists that we are championing, um, they're really like, I mean, even if they don't say it, I just,
Yeah.
you really get a sense that they really appreciate and grateful, because
Mhm.
it's like, who else is playing Afrobeat? So who else is playing,
So true.
like we played, we played on Frequencies 2 weeks back. We played a 12-minute instrumental song featuring John McLaughlin, who's one of the best jazz and just guitarists in the world,
Yeah.
with an Indian slide guitarist.
When someone
It
says, I remember that track.
was an incredible track, and we just played the whole thing. And my producer and I were like, "Let's do it," and we did it.
Yeah.
So kind of breaking those kind of like boundaries or whatever.
Mhm.
But people, I mean, yeah, they appreciate it, because it's like no one else is taking a chance with it. So okay, along comes someone who's really genuinely excited about the music and says, send it to me.
Mhm.
One thing though, you also as an artist, once you make that initial point of contact, you want to make it as easy as possible for the person to like make it happen. I mean, there are times when I just get tired of chasing somebody.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck it, I just got other things to do.
Especially with the volume that comes to you, everyone knows your name in the industry, so
It's
I
like you
can
get this
imagine.
stuff and you're trying your best to like reach out to everybody because you know that you were at that point, um, and when you wanted someone to take a chance with you, right? When I was looking for writing gigs, I mean, there was almost like one time there was a whole year where I thought I had a pretty strong resume and I couldn't find work in the city of Toronto. I was like, what do you want me to do
Yeah.
with all the stuff that you've done, right? So I would just say keep banging away, man. If you don't hear from a certain show, just keep on doing it. And when you have something new, you can send it along. Like some tracks will hit and some tracks won't.
Yeah. I think that is a good point to leave it on if nobody has any. Oh, we have a last minute question. It would be in my interest to message him directly with someone sending just you first. Okay. Okay, Matthew, sounds good. I'll actually drop both of the emails for Afrowave. We are very approachable. You look at me right now. You could like have a whole conversation with me. And Lexicon's the same. So I'll just drop the emails in here and then just close out really quickly. So if you're trying to collaborate with us on something like this, something more on the business side or operational wise, then you can reach me at operations@afrowaveto.com. Our general email, so this is where you can send submissions.
Right.
Like,
Oh, you know what? I'll keep that too in case
okay.
we place someone on the show who might be a good fit. I can pass. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can submit, it's in our bio on Instagram as well. You can submit to info@afrowaveto.com. Thank you, D. Connor. I'm glad you enjoyed. Like Errol said, we get a huge volume because people are now starting to kind of pin us under that category of supports Black music. So we get a lot and we have a small team. We can't get through them all the time or as quickly as you may hope, but please do send your stuff to that email, the info@afrowaveto.com, and we will try to get through to it. When we're having a showcase, we kind of just go through all the ones we've gotten and select artists from that. So feel free to do that. Lex is also accessible if you email there and just kind of direct it to him. He'll read through it, or if I get the email, I'll read through it and then we'll get back to you.
That's a good point, and I know we've gone over time, and it's been a long day for me too. I thought all day today, but what Connor said there, it's shocking that in a city like Toronto that has 4 major dailies, that there's not that there are hardly any music journalists in any of those papers. It's absolutely shocking to me that's the case right now. When we were blasting away the sun, we had one main music writer, John Sakamoto, who did like top 40, like the big stuff. Like he would interview Stevie Wonder and Celine Dion and all these people, right? Kieran Grant, a good friend of mine, he had his scene was just independence and what was happening in the local clubs, right? It's a lot of independent music. My thing was like world, hip hop, global, jazz, right?
Yeah.
3 music writers, man, and now there are none anywhere. Like I don't think any paper has a music writer for what's happening in the city. Like we have no issue filling the show every Saturday at all. Granted, frequencies is a bit, I wouldn't even say easier because it all takes a lot of curating and a lot of like really going for like quality stuff. So frequencies, the national show is more of like half is global and half is Canadian, and then parity, half women, half men, right? But that there's nothing like that in Toronto, and like so, like the point being, like I can find this stuff. Thank you, appreciate it, Gio.
Thank you too, Gio.
It's embarrassing. Like some of the stuff that we're playing on big city, even that's coming out from Toronto, is just like, holy shit, man. It's crazy.
And the stuff that we get in the Afrowave
I
email,
bet.
they end up on my personal playlist a lot of a lot of times because it's really good quality, and I think the quality of independent stuff has gone up so much is that if you want to be in the game, you have to hit that bar as well. So a lot of the things that we get end up on my personal playlist. Yes, I listen to you guys over and over. I know even Lex will like talk about some of the artists that are in and just how they perform in the showcase. So there's a lot of stuff. So it's so unfortunate that there aren't enough outlets to have everyone be able to get that
Yeah.
kind of exposure because there is some good work.
Geo, are you talking about the national show or Big City?
Big City.
Oh, Big City? Shit. This is the one for the national. Oh yeah, you can. Just go to listen. Yeah. Hold on a sec. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, it's usually. Oh, here we go. I did your research for you, man. Yeah.
We'll just close up after. So there are the links, Gio, and anyone else who wanted to access them. Just in closing, thank you so much, Errol, for coming and doing this. Just based on the conversation that we've had, like I tell panelists all the time, it means so much, especially to me as an artist who face the same struggles that we discuss all the time in these workshops. That you were so willing. I emailed him, guys, and he was just like, "Yes, when is it? What do you need from me?"
Sure.
So that means so much, and we thank you so much for coming on and sharing all the information that you did and all your experience. We really, really appreciate it. To everyone who came on tonight, thank you so much for coming on as well. I tell people all the time, we could have the workshops, but it would not mean the same. It would not be the same if you guys weren't in and chatting with us and asking.
Thanks, man. It was a small group, but like really, really engaged. So,
thank
and
you.
I wish you all the luck, guys. I know it's
tough, but we can do it.
Do your thing, man. On the shoulders of the ancestors, as they say, right?
Yeah. So just in closing, if you want to hear the workshops again, they will all be up on our website, and I put that in earlier. I'll just throw it back in here really quickly again, so you have that, or you can email us, and that'll be up shortly, so you can listen or share with those who didn't get to. And just thank you to everyone, for especially those who are in for all the workshops. I hope you have a great night.
Be safe, guys. Stay safe. Take care. Thanks a lot, Carice. We'll talk, eh?
Thank you too.
All right.